Most people don't break because life is hard. They break because they were never trained for it. Pressure hits, and suddenly emotions take control. One insult ruins the day, one failure shakes their identity. One unfair moment turns into bitterness that lasts for years. We live in a world obsessed with comfort, validation, and ease. Yet anxiety, anger, and weakness are everywhere. The ancient Stoics saw this coming. Nearly 2,000 years ago, they built a mental system not to escape pain, but to become unbreakable because of it. Today, you're going to learn 7 ancient Stoic truths that don't promise happiness, motivation, or quick relief. They promise something far more valuable: inner strength that does not collapse under pressure, calm that doesn't depend on circumstances, and a mind that cannot be controlled by chaos, people, or emotions. Stay with me until the end, because these truths were never meant to comfort you. They were meant to forge you. 1. Pain is not the enemy. It's the training. Modern society treats pain like a disease. Avoid it, eliminate it, numb it. If something feels uncomfortable, we escape. If something feels difficult, we delay. If something hurts emotionally, we distract ourselves, and then we wonder why people are so fragile. The Stoics saw pain very differently. They didn't see it as punishment. They saw it as preparation. Pain is not what breaks you. Untrained minds break because of pain. Think about it. A body that never lifts weight becomes weak. A mind that never faces discomfort becomes dependent. The first sign of pressure, and it collapses. This is why small problems feel overwhelming to so many people. They were never trained to tolerate difficulty. The Stoic solution is not to wait for life to hurt you. It's to walk toward discomfort on purpose. This is called voluntary hardship. Not reckless suffering, not self-destruction, but intentional exposure to difficulty so that pain loses its power over you. Cold showers, training when motivation is gone, choosing the hard conversation instead of silence, doing the work when no one is watching and no reward is guaranteed. Every time you do this, something important happens. Your nervous system learns, I can handle this. Your mind learns, discomfort doesn't control me. Your identity shifts from someone who avoids pain to someone who uses it. Most people wait until life forces hardship on them. Job loss, betrayal, illness, failure. And when it arrives, they panic. The Stoic trains before the storm, because the man who has already faced discomfort daily does not fear it when it comes uninvited. This is why comfort is dangerous. Comfort makes pain feel shocking. Discomfort makes pain familiar, and familiar pain no longer scares you. Look at how people react to criticism today. A single negative comment can ruin their mood for days. Why? Because they trained for praise, not resistance. The Stoic trains resistance. They don't need life to be easy. They need themselves to be strong. This truth alone changes how you see struggle. When something feels difficult, instead of asking, how do I escape this? You ask, how is this shaping me? Pressure becomes feedback. Fatigue becomes information. Discomfort becomes a signal that growth is happening. This doesn't mean you chase suffering blindly. It means you stop running from it. There is a quiet confidence that comes from this mindset. You stop fearing bad days. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop panicking when things don't go your way, because you've trained for it. Here is the practice. Every day, choose one small discomfort on purpose. Something safe, something controlled, something that reminds you that you are capable. Finish the workout when your mind says, stop. Take the cold water at the end of your shower. Speak the truth you've been avoiding. Do the task you've been postponing. Then say this to yourself, calmly, without drama. Discomfort is my training ground. Say it not to motivate yourself, but to remind yourself who you are becoming. Because the goal of Stoicism is not comfort, it is resilience, and the man who trains in discomfort cannot be broken by pain. 2. Your mind, not events, decides your suffering. Most people believe one dangerous lie: that situation ruined my peace. But the Stoics were brutally clear about this. Events don't control you. Your interpretation does. Two people experience the same insult. One laughs and moves on. The other replays it for weeks, building anger, resentment, and self-doubt. The event was identical. The suffering was not. This is where real strength begins, or ends. The Stoics understood something most people never learn. Pain is optional. Meaning is chosen. What hurts you is not what happens. It's the story you tell yourself about what happened. This is disrespect. This means I'm weak. This proves I'm failing. Those are not facts. They are judgments, and judgments are under your control. Most people live on emotional autopilot. Something triggers them, and they react instantly. Anger before thought, fear before clarity, sadness before reason. The Stoic does the opposite. They insert a pause, not a dramatic pause, not forced positivity, just a moment of awareness. This pause is power, because the moment you pause, you reclaim choice. A harsh comment appears. Instead of reacting, you ask, is this within my control? Is this truly harmful, or just uncomfortable? What response aligns with my values? This is not weakness. This is mastery. Think about how often your mood is controlled by things you cannot change. Traffic, emails, other people's opinions, past mistakes. Each time you hand your emotions to something external, you give away authority over your life. The Stoic refuses this trade. They understand a hard truth. If your peace depends on circumstances, you will never have peace. This doesn't mean you suppress emotion. It means you observe it without obedience. Anger arises. You notice it. Fear appears. You name it, but you don't let it drive. Like clouds passing through the sky, emotions come and go. The sky does not chase them. This is why Stoics are not cold. They are stable. They feel deeply, but they do not drown. Here is the practical framework. When something triggers you, do 3 things. Pause. Create space between stimulus and response. Reframe. Ask, what else could this mean? Often the answer is simpler and less personal than your ego suggests. Choose. Respond based on principle, not impulse. This is where mental toughness is built. Not in silence, not in isolation, but in moments of irritation, disrespect, and pressure. Most people let emotions drag them wherever they go. The Stoic walks beside their emotions, but holds the reins. Over time, something changes. Insults lose their sting. Chaos loses its grip. Other people lose their power over you because you are no longer reacting. You are responding. Say this to yourself when emotions rise. I control the meaning. I control the response. Not loudly, not dramatically, calmly. This is how you become unbreakable. Not by controlling the world, but by mastering your inner one. 3. Stop expecting life to be fair. One of the fastest ways to become bitter is believing this lie. Life should be fair. Fair effort, fair outcomes, fair treatment. When reality doesn't match that expectation, anger follows, then resentment, then a quiet sense of victimhood that eats away at strength. The Stoics cut this illusion early. They never expected fairness. They expected reality. Life does not reward goodness consistently. It does not punish wrongdoing reliably, and it does not explain itself to you. Once you accept this, something powerful happens. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And start asking, what do I do with this? Most emotional suffering doesn't come from pain itself. It comes from the argument with reality. This shouldn't have happened. They didn't deserve that success. I did everything right. Those thoughts feel justified, but they weaken you. Because while you're busy demanding fairness, life keeps moving forward. The Stoic doesn't waste energy negotiating with the universe. They adapt. Think about how many people break after betrayal. Not because betrayal hurts, it always does, but because they believed loyalty guaranteed protection, or how people collapse after failure. Not because failure is fatal, it isn't, but because they assumed effort guaranteed reward. That assumption is fragile. The Stoic mindset is different. You do the right thing without needing justice as payment. You train, build, and act without guarantees. This makes you dangerous in the best way. Because when fairness is removed from the equation, nothing can be taken from you. No one owes you recognition. No one owes you loyalty. No one owes you outcomes. Once you stop expecting these things, you stop being controlled by their absence. This is not pessimism. It's freedom. You no longer collapse when treated unfairly. You no longer spiral when effort goes unnoticed. You no longer personalize chaos. Instead, you redirect. Unfair treatment becomes information. Setbacks become training. Loss becomes material. The Stoic understands a hard truth. Complaining does not restore balance. Strength does. Life is not a courtroom, it's a training ground. And every time you face injustice without bitterness, you upgrade your character. This is where most people fail. They confuse fairness with meaning. When fairness disappears, they feel lost. The Stoic anchors meaning internally. My values don't depend on reward. My discipline doesn't depend on praise. My character doesn't depend on circumstances. This creates emotional armor. You stop wasting energy on resentment. You stop replaying insults. You stop explaining why you were wronged. You move forward, quietly, relentlessly. Here is the shift. Replace this question, why is this unfair, with this one, what strength is this demanding from me? That single question turns pain into purpose. It moves you from victim to architect, from reactive to deliberate, from fragile to formidable. Say this to yourself when life disappoints you. Life doesn't owe me fairness. I owe myself strength. Say it without anger. Say it without drama. Because the moment you stop expecting fairness, you stop breaking when it disappears. And that is when you become unshakable. 4. Focus only on what you control. Most anxiety comes from one mistake, trying to control what was never yours. Other people's opinions, their behavior, the outcome of your effort, the timing of success. You exhaust yourself fighting forces that don't answer to you. The Stoics ended this struggle with a single rule. Control what is yours. Release the rest. This is not philosophy for scholars. This is survival strategy. You control your thoughts, you control your choices, you control your actions and effort. Everything else is noise. Most people reverse this order. They obsess over outcomes they can't guarantee, while neglecting the actions they can control. They worry about being respected instead of behaving with self-respect. They fear failure instead of committing to disciplined effort. This split creates helplessness. Because when your sense of power is tied to externals, you feel weak by default. The Stoic regains power by narrowing focus. They ask one grounding question in every situation: is this within my control? If the answer is no, they release it. Not with anger, not with denial, with clarity. If the answer is yes, they act immediately, decisively, without complaint. This mental filter changes everything. Criticism appears. You don't control their opinion. You do control your response and standards. Uncertainty arises. You don't control the future. You do control preparation and discipline. Loss occurs. You don't control what was taken. You do control how you rebuild. This is why Stoics remain calm under pressure. They don't carry the weight of the world. They carry responsibility only for what belongs to them. Imagine steering a ship in a storm. You don't control the waves, you don't control the wind, but you do control the helm. A panicked captain screams at the ocean. A disciplined one adjusts the wheel. The Stoic is the disciplined captain. They stop wasting energy on blame, fear, and speculation. They redirect it into action. This is not passive acceptance. It is focused aggression. Aggression toward your own standards, your own habits, your own consistency. The moment you accept that most things are outside your control, life becomes lighter and sharper. You stop taking things personally. You stop spiraling mentally. You stop reacting to every stimulus. Your world shrinks to a manageable size. Thought, choice, action, that is your territory. Everything else is weather. Here is the daily practice. When something frustrates you, pause and divide the situation in 2 columns. In my control, my effort, my attitude, my next move. Not in my control, their reaction, timing, outcome. Then do this. Act fully on column 1. Release column 2 without resentment. Repeat this often enough and something changes. You feel grounded, decisive, unshakable, because you no longer confuse responsibility with control. Say this to yourself when anxiety rises. I stand firm in what is mine to command. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Now, this truth alone dismantles fear, because once you know exactly where your power ends, you stop wasting it. And when power is no longer scattered, it becomes strength. 5. Voluntary hardship makes you immune to fear. Fear controls people who have never met discomfort on their own terms. They fear loss because they've only known abundance. They fear hunger because they've never gone without. They fear rejection because they've always avoided exposure. The Stoics solved this by doing something counterintuitive. They chose hardship before life forced it on them, not to suffer, but to become unthreatenable. Voluntary hardship is not about pain for pain's sake. It's about removing fear's leverage. When you willingly experience discomfort, fear loses its bargaining power. Ask yourself this: how can hunger scare a man who has fasted on purpose? How can cold scare someone who steps into it daily? How can loss terrify a person who has practiced living with less? It can't. Fear feeds on the unknown. Voluntary hardship makes the unknown familiar. Most people build their lives around avoiding discomfort, and without realizing it, they build a fragile existence. Everything must go right for them to feel okay. The Stoic builds the opposite. They train for days when nothing goes right. This is why comfort weakens. Comfort convinces you that safety is normal. Hardship teaches you that adaptation is normal. The Stoics practice this deliberately. Simple food, basic clothing, sleeping without luxury, enduring cold, hunger, and inconvenience. Not because they lacked options, but because they refused to be enslaved by them. They asked a powerful question. If this disappeared tomorrow, would I still be fine? If the answer was no, they trained. Voluntary hardship does 3 things to your mind. First, it sharpens gratitude. When comfort returns, you don't feel entitled, you feel appreciative. Second, it builds confidence grounded in reality. Not hype, not ego, but proof I've handled worse. Third, it eliminates fear of loss, because you've already rehearsed living without. Most people fear discomfort because they imagine it will break them, but discomfort doesn't break you. Avoidance does. Avoidance teaches your mind that you are weak. Voluntary hardship teaches your mind that you are capable. This changes how you carry yourself. You negotiate less. You complain less. You hesitate less. Because fear no longer dictates your decisions. You stop asking, what if this goes wrong? And start asking, can I endure the consequences? That shift alone changes your life. This doesn't require extreme measures. No heroics, no reckless suffering. The Stoic approach is simple and controlled. Choose 2 small hardships per week. Safe, intentional, uncomfortable. Cold exposure at the end of your shower. Training when motivation is gone. Skipping a meal and noticing you survive. Living simply when you could indulge. Doing the difficult task first. Each time, you send a message to your nervous system. I don't need comfort to function. And over time, fear loses its voice. Say this to yourself when you step into discomfort. Nothing essential can be taken from me. Say it calmly. Say it without bravado. Because the man who can endure hardship by choice cannot be controlled by it when it arrives uninvited. This is how Stoics become immune to fear. Not by avoiding pain, but by meeting it on their own terms. 6. Detach from outcomes. Commit to discipline. Most people tie their self-worth to outcomes. Win, they feel valuable. Lose, they feel broken. Progress, they feel confident. Setback, they doubt everything. This is emotional instability disguised as ambition. The Stoics refused to live this way. They understood a hard truth. Outcomes are never fully yours. Discipline is. When your identity depends on results, you become fragile. Because results are unpredictable. Markets change. People leave. Effort goes unnoticed. Timing works against you. If your peace depends on success, failure will always own you. The Stoic detaches from outcomes, not because they don't care, but because they care about what actually builds strength. They commit to process, daily effort, consistent standards, right action, repeated. This is where real confidence comes from, not from winning, but from knowing you showed up correctly. Think about someone who goes to the gym only when motivated. They feel good on good days, useless on bad ones. Now think about someone who trains by schedule, rain or shine, high energy or none. Their confidence doesn't fluctuate because it's built on discipline, not emotion. The Stoic treats life the same way. They don't ask, will this work? They ask, is this the right action? They don't ask, what if I fail? They ask, did I act with integrity and effort? This removes fear at its root. Fear comes from attachment to outcomes you can't control. Once you detach, fear weakens. You still aim high, you still want results, but you stop bargaining with them emotionally. You act and let reality respond. This is why Stoics are resilient. They don't collapse after losses. They don't inflate after wins. They return to the same standard every day. Action, effort, character. Over time, this creates momentum that looks like talent. People call it discipline. But discipline is just loyalty to the process. Most people quit not because they fail, but because results don't arrive fast enough to feed their ego. The Stoic outlasts them because they are not fueled by praise or fear. They are fueled by principle. Here is the practical shift. Stop asking yourself, am I winning today? Start asking, did I do the work today? That question is always answerable, and it's always within your control. When you tie your worth to discipline, no day is wasted. Even failure becomes useful. Even silence becomes progress. Even struggle becomes part of the path. Say this to yourself when doubt appears. My value is in my discipline, not the outcome. Say it quietly. Say it consistently. Because the moment you stop chasing validation through results, you gain something far more powerful. Stability, and a man who is stable cannot be shaken. 7. Remember death to remember how to live. Most people live as if time is unlimited. They delay the difficult conversation, postpone the meaningful work, tolerate lives they don't respect, not because they are lazy, but because they assume there will be time later. The Stoics called this the most dangerous illusion. They practiced memento mori. Remember that you will die, not to be morbid, but to become awake. Death, to the Stoic, was not a threat. It was a lens. When you remember that your time is finite, trivial fears lose their grip. You stop arguing with strangers online. You stop chasing approval from people who don't matter. You stop wasting energy on things that won't matter in the end. You become precise. Most anxiety comes from false urgency. Most regret comes from false permanence. Memento mori corrects both. It asks a simple, unsettling question. If this were the last chapter of your life, would this matter? That question cuts through noise instantly. Petty conflicts fade. Excuses collapse. Truth becomes unavoidable. The Stoics used death as a tool, not for despair, but for alignment. When you remember death, you stop living passively. You speak more honestly. You choose more deliberately. You tolerate less nonsense. Because you realize something crucial. Every wasted day is irreversible. Most people fear death because they haven't lived. The Stoic reverses this. They live so fully aligned with their values that death loses its power to intimidate. They don't rush, but they don't drift. They don't panic, but they don't postpone. They act with calm urgency. This is what makes them unbreakable. When your priorities are clear, chaos can't confuse you. When your values are lived daily, regret has nowhere to grow. Think about how many people are mentally fragile because they are internally divided. They want change, but choose comfort. They want meaning, but avoid responsibility. They want peace, but tolerate misalignment. Memento mori ends that division. It forces a decision. Live intentionally, or waste what you can never recover. This doesn't mean living recklessly. It means living truthfully. You don't need to do more. You need to stop doing what doesn't matter. Here is the Stoic practice. Each morning, ask, if today were my last full day, what would I refuse to do? And each evening ask, did I live today in a way I would respect? These questions refine you. They strip away fear-based choices. They strengthen value-based action. Over time, something profound happens. You stop fearing endings because you are no longer postponing beginnings. Say this to yourself quietly, without drama. I live today as if time is precious, because it is. Not to rush, not to impress, but to be awake, because the man who remembers death does not waste life, and the man who does not waste life cannot be broken. You've just walked through 7 ancient Stoic truths, not ideas meant to comfort you, not words designed to motivate you for a moment, but principles meant to reshape how you face life. You learned that pain is not the enemy, it's training. That your mind, not events, decides your suffering. That life was never promised to be fair, only real. That power begins where control is clear. That voluntary hardship kills fear at its root. That discipline matters more than outcomes. And that remembering death is how you learn to live. Stoicism doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. Stronger than chaos. Stronger than emotions that once controlled you. Stronger than a world that constantly tries to pull you off center. The goal was never to avoid struggle. The goal was to become someone struggle cannot break. Now the question is simple. Which truth hit you the hardest? Leave it in the comments. Not for others, but for yourself. Commit to one principle today, one action, one decision that moves you closer to being unshakable. If this resonated with you, support the channel. Like the video. Share it with someone who needs strength, not comfort. And subscribe if you're committed to building a disciplined, resilient mind. Let's end with this affirmation. Say it calmly. I am becoming mentally unbreakable day by day. Carry that with you, and remember, Life will test you, but now you are trained.